Okay, let's go on to this next one here. Now, how about indoor tanners? Of course, the tanning bed has been much maligned, but is actually, in my opinion, the most efficient method that you can produce vitamin D, because guess what? If you go to tanning bed, you get both sides at the same time, don't you? So it produces it very, very rapidly. So you can get 1,000 IU, maybe only total body minutes of 10 instead of 20 minutes of exposure there. So indoor tanners, very high levels, and I keep waiting for the research to really start going in tanning beds so we start comparing the health of tanners to the health of non-tanners. Of course, everybody knows that if you go into a tanning bed, you're going to get cancer, you get sick of diet, all of these things. Simply not true. Okay, and here's one that I always get a kick out of. We take a look over here to the left. Dermatologists. They are 13 to 14 nanograms per milliliter. That's all. They're sick. They are really sick. And I'm not talking about all dermatologists, because there are some wonderful, wonderful dermatologists, and much of my information I derive from the research that they're doing. And there are people, particularly in England, who are crying bloody murder at their cohorts, telling them to stop, telling people to stay away from the sunlight. Okay, so the question we have at this time, if 6,000 IU per day are needed to get 80% or 98% of the population above 40 nanograms, I think I blew them. I think you said it was 96 instead of 98. It's okay if I say 98, all right. Don't want to exaggerate anything. And if that level is what is natural and intended, then isn't UVB exposure from sunlight the obviously the natural way to get that? And I would say that's absolutely correct. We just don't turn around all the years of development that quick. So here we have a vitamin D revolution then. Research shows that there's no longer any question that humans are intended to get UV exposure in quantities consistent with developing a suntan. In my opinion, the suntan is the best sunblocker that exists. Get yourself a good tan. And that's the way to do it. And you'll talk about dermatologists waking up in my hometown. I talked to a friend the other day, and he says, I went to my dermatologist, and I said, how do I keep from getting melanoma? And this dermatologist actually said to him, get out and get yourself a good suntan, my friend. And I thought, glory, hallelujah. How far we have come and how far we are coming. I hope there are a lot of people here in Omaha, a lot of dermatologists that believe the same thing. Okay, now, I must admit here that I did not expect to have a screen quite this large. I've never done this on this one this large before. But so I'm going to look at my slides from here. When we sold NIF, National Institute of Fitness, we had 140 beds, but we had 149 people in attendance there. That's because many of them were driving out just to get in. The reason for that type of success, our guests got well. Here are the things that we were able to accomplish at what we called NIF. We are known across the world as simply NIF. Everybody called us NIF. 2/3 of type 2 diabetics were able to cease using insulin injections, hypoglycemic drugs such as glucotrol, diabeta, or whatever it was they were taking in less than 2 weeks. It was actually 11.7 days. And this was one of the reasons that the world beat a path to our door, because we got people well. Better than any physicians group that I have ever seen in my life. We got people well. Those with rheumatoid arthritis, it happened many times, particularly in the hands. They would gain full range of motion in less than 2 weeks. We weren't quite as successful with osteoarthritis, but we had some success there too. Angina, that terrible pain in the heart when you have severe heart disease. You're getting a blockage of the oxygen carrying capacity into that muscle tissue in the heart. Many of those, the angina would disappear in 1 week. We had one guy scheduled for open heart bypass surgery. He asked if he could come. I said, not without your doctor's permission, you can't. But he did show up. And the day that he'd originally been scheduled for that open heart bypass surgery, he walked up our Snow Canyon Road. That has nothing to do with snow. We're in a warm area, but Snow Canyon. Well, climbing 500 feet, over 4.7 miles. No angina, no pain. He went back to his doctor and he said, doctor, explain this. They checked him out. He says, you are no longer a candidate for open heart bypass surgery. Now, it wasn't all vitamin D, folks. We are sunny down there. There's no doubt about that. We were using a low-fat, primarily vegetarian diet also, so we took a lot of poisons out. We fed a lot of greens, dark berries and so forth, which increased antioxidant, but we had them walking for hours in the sun. And as Joe, I think, had mentioned in the introduction, 110 tons of fat lost during that time. Now, I want all of you to picture that going down the road in a few semi-trucks. Kind of ugly thing, isn't it? Yeah, well, by the way, some of you have probably gone on a program where you've lost a lot of weight at one time or another, right? Never? Never lost any weight? Oh, someone has to have lost weight here. Okay, I see, yeah, we've done that. I want to know where it went. You lost it? Where did it go? Well, it was breathed out as water vapor, came out in the sweat, used as energy, doing all of those things. That's what went. But a lot of water vapor. You breathe out the fat. Did you know that? That means anybody here, if you're all on diet, should all be sitting around right now breathing each other's fat. Just thought I might throw that in. Okay, so lots of exercise in the sunlight. And I began to realize, actually late in our careers, in this particular field, that one of the big things that was happening was due to the southern Utah sunshine. All right, I wanted to throw in just a couple more slides here, and then I will button it up tonight. But I don't hear a lot about Sato's study done, and so I just thought I'd put it in. This is a study done in Japan. Can you picture a bunch of women who are elderly, Alzheimer's patients? They're staying inside the hospital, and because staying inside the hospital and getting no vitamin D whatsoever, they're having hip fractures, one after another after another. Sato says, you know, what if I took 50% of these people and I put them out and I had them sunbathe? Didn't give them vitamin D. Put them out into sunbathing situations. And he only exposed the face and arms, not nearly enough of the body as he should have. Nevertheless, in 1 year of that program, those women who were in the sunlight increased their vitamin D levels by 400%, from 5 nanograms, obviously all of them were about to break and fall down, up to about 19 nanograms, still severely deficient. Not as severely deficient, but nonetheless, look what happened. We take a look over here, and we have a gain of 3.1% in bone mass during that time. The other group, who stayed inside the hospital, there was a 3.3% loss in bone mass in that time. Now, all of you might say at this particular point, so what? So what does that mean? What happened to the fracture rate? The fracture rate is all important, of course. Did it prevent fractures among these women? And the fact is, relatively, if we take a look at the relative risk for every single case of a fracture that was had by the people who were out in the sunlight, there were 6 fractures. That's a 600% difference. Can you imagine that? And they tell you to avoid the sun? Has the world gone mad? I think sometimes it has. And the last thing, I also wanted to mention this on osteoporosis, that an investigation in Spain concluded that women who actively participated in the sun exposure had 1/11 the chance of a hip fracture as those who did not. We're talking about people going out and doing that terrible thing of sunbathing, getting it right on them, naked at noon, as we say. So, I wanted you to know, you've seen that, you've all seen the graphs, the old charts they used to teach us biology and so forth. It shows men developing, becoming different and so forth. Have you ever seen the end product of that particular evolution? I'm going to show it to you right now. Okay. Unfortunately, in my life, even though I do get out in the sun a lot, too many times I'm the last guy. I'm the caveman living over there on the right side on top of that computer trying to get things done. Well, this was presented by the Sunlight Institute and, of course, by Grassroots Health, and I thank you very much. Hope you've enjoyed.
Thank you very much, Mark. Mark is the author of Vitamin D3 and Sunlight for Optimal Health. VitaminDdoc.org, is that correct? .com. VitaminDdoc.com. Our last speaker today is right here from Omaha, and you are privileged to have one of the world giants in vitamin D research right here in your community from Creighton University. He's been in the field of vitamin D and calcium research for nearly half a century. More than 400 published articles on this topic. Decorated by the government, I believe you received the Atwater Award from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which is one of the highest awards given in nutrition. We're very pleased to have Dr. Robert Haney from Creighton University. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Well, good evening, everyone. I've been asked to give you a little bit of the science background, and if you have any questions, we'd be happy to try to deal with them at the end of the presentation, which is designedly brief. One of the things I'm going to want to talk with you about is how a single nutrient could have effects in so many different systems and tissues. It sounds a bit like snake oil, and we need to deal with that because there's a lot of skepticism as a consequence of that. But I'm going to start here with a definition of what a deficiency would be. A deficiency of a nutrient is a condition in which inadequate intake results in a significant degree of dysfunction or disease, whereas an adequate intake of that same nutrient is the situation in which further increases, taking more of it doesn't produce any additional improvement. So it's kind of a functional definition. If taking more of a nutrient makes you function better, then you were deficient, and if it doesn't, then you weren't. It's about what it boils down to. And in order to figure that out, we need to think about, what is nutrition for us? What does it mean for us? And there are several different operating models for the media and for regulators, for nutritional policymakers, and for nutritional physiologists. But the overwhelming majority of the media reports about nutrition emphasizes harm and risk, while the explanation is partly that that's newsworthy. Still, the impression that you convey to the general public is one of danger and concern. You got to be careful. Now, for nutritional policymakers, on the other hand, nutrition is about determining the least you can get by on without suffering overt disease of a specific type. Carol pointed out a few moments ago how much it took to prevent rickets. That's precisely where our current vitamin D recommendations are pegged. It's pegged to what you need not to have rickets. Doesn't take you any further than that. We used to be more honest. We called them minimum daily requirements. We've done some spin on that. We now call them adequate intakes, but really it's the least you can get by on. And the general public, I don't think, adequately realizes that. And for nutritional physiologists, and I consider myself one, adult nutrition is about preventive maintenance of the body, just as we have preventive maintenance of our automobiles. It's about keeping them from wearing out or breaking down prematurely. And its referent is the intake that prevailed when human physiology evolved. Recall, we evolved in equatorial East Africa wearing no clothes, so we got a lot of vitamin D all the time, every day. Now, chronic disease is what keeps physicians busy and is the cause of the huge medical bills that we all struggle with. Its origin is almost always multifactorial. It's an interaction of our genetic heritage with various environmental factors, including nutrition, infection, various toxins, various kinds of injuries, some self-inflicted, some not. The point is that the body has mechanisms to repair this damage or to fight it at its origin. Vitamin D, as it turns out, is an essential component of many of these repair mechanisms. And when we have low vitamin D status, we don't do a good job of either protecting ourselves or repairing the damage that all these things produce for us. And this begins to give us some sense about how vitamin D is active in so many different body systems. Now, I want to spend a moment on this preventive maintenance model. As lay people, I grew up, you probably grew up thinking about individual nutrients being important for individual organs or systems. This is good for the skin, or this is good for the eyes, or this is good for something else, etc. And that's a mistake. All tissues need all nutrients. Shortages impair the functioning of all body systems, not just the one that produces the biggest symptoms. And premature wearing out of an organ or a system as a consequence of long-time nutritional deficiency is going to vary from person to person depending upon his or her genetic composition, which makes one system more vulnerable than the others.